Hello everyone, I hope you're doing fine. My name is Mahmoud. I'm a practicing architect and a computational designer based in Morocco. And this channel would be especially for videos and tutorials related to mainly Rhinoceros, Grasshopper, and in a more general sense into computational thinking and design strategy. And if you're here, that means you're either a student that heard about Grasshopper or is trying to perfect his skills in Grasshopper, or a professional that never had courses related to these two softwares and would like to understand more in depth how they operate. So I studied both, and me myself having started Grasshopper by myself, I know that there are some complications. So if you're trying to learn Grasshopper, this is the graph that would represent the effort and the skill that you would learn. So let's say this is the effort you should put, and this is the skill. So in order to have higher skills, you need to put a lot of effort. But right here at the starting point, you don't need a lot. Here, what you need is to understand the basics. And this is what we're gonna do at Afterwork Workflows. We're going to see some case studies, exercises, or what I like to call workouts that would help you bootstrap your learning experience in order to achieve this nice plateau that eventually, if you want to become a, computational designer, you would need to outperform. So let's get started. In today's workout, we're gonna look at this picture and we're gonna try to to create an architectural form that would represent what we see here, and also what we call the crown shyness. So basically these are trees that shy out from each other while creating these almost geometric patches of greenery. But the thing is, these patches do not seem to get near each other. So what I would like to do is to create a landscape of pylons that are holding onto geometrical patterns that would replicate the crown shyness. So it would let the sun getting in, and also would create this sense of playfulness and organic promenade, I would say. So let's get to it. I have Rhinoceros in here. Let me open Grasshopper. So if you've never opened Grasshopper, this is what you do. It's either you go to standard and you click on launch Grasshopper here, or you type in the command. You prompt in the command prompter Grasshopper. You're gonna have to wait a little bit. So once Grasshopper opens, there's one thing we need to do at first. I grab this window with the top here and I squeeze it into the right side until this halo appears, and then I let go. This would split my screen into two, Grasshopper and then Rhinoceros. So speaking of our concept here, like creating these random panels, geometric patterns, etc., I would want to use a geometrical mathematical function. I mean, it's not a function, but it's like a geometrical, it's like a geometrical shape that occurs while doing some gymnastics in form. And that's a Voronoi pattern. So if I go here and I type Voronoi, so a Voronoi pattern is something that looks like this, and it's very, very well known at the architectural realm. Because of its shape that divides a surface or space in a cellular way, somehow almost organic. And you can also find a lot of parametric use cases of this typology. So this was discovered by Georgi Voronoi, which is a mathematician. And the idea behind it is fairly simple, that you have multiple points that operate within a space. You connect these points to almost triangulate them. And then these triangles, you take the middle points of each one of them, and then the center points, and you try to draw the lines that would intersect until they create these patterns. Fairly easy. So in Grasshopper, we already have something similar to this. But let's go step by step. So the first step is we need to know that Grasshopper is a canvas. That means it's a two-dimensional paper that we're gonna come here and just start dropping some components that we find in these spots here. So it's either we look up for components in here, or we double click on the canvas and we type what we want. For example, let me search for a Voronoi. You can see here that I have a lot of them. Let me check this one. So as I can see here, I have some sort of a battery, but it's not very eye-pleasing. I cannot read the wordings. And also this black thing here is a little bit annoying to my taste. So what I would want to do is to go up here at display and select draw icons. This would draw icons that would help you remember the different icons and the different functions of these components. The second thing we're going to do is to click on display again and then draw full names. This would show you the inputs and the outputs, which is going to be nice for you if you want to understand how the syntax is going. Great. And then, trust me on this one, just activate draw fancy wires and we'd see that later. So right now we have our battery that is called Voronoi. How do we know that? I hover over it and I stop my cursor until it tells me the name. So this Voronoi is a planar Voronoi diagram for a collection of points. So I'm here right now in Rhinoceros. So I might create some random points in the space. And I would want to create a Voronoi diagram from these ones here. So maybe if I try to integrate these points into the Voronoi battery component, it would actually draw the shape. So how can I do this? I cannot just drag them and put them in here. I need to reference them. So what do I mean by referencing? Actually, referencing is understanding the type of geometry that we have in Rhino and then pushing it into small batteries that exist in here, in params geometry. So we have a lot of typologies, a lot of types of geometries. We have B-reps, we have curves, we have, let me put my glasses on so I can see the words. Yeah, we have curves, we have B-reps, we have meshes. All these are types of geometries that we can find. And also we could find here the points. So right now I'm gonna need this point here. I'm gonna integrate all these points inside this one here. So I can do is select everything and then click, right click and choose set multiple points. So look at this. I have here a bubble. It shows me that the floating parameter point is failing to collect the data. And also it's yellowish, it's very orange, and it means that it is empty, that there is a problem. So this one is not working, this one either. So we need to integrate these points into this component. What we can do is set multiple points. Right. What happens is that it turns gray, and when I click on it, it shows me in green all the points that are integrated. Now, this is my point, and look what happens when I drag on this little half circle. Actually, I want you to consider this as neurons and they're interconnected. So what I would want to connect here is my point to the points of the Voronoi component. And this actually would create this pattern. And because Grasshopper is parametric, that means everything I'm going to change is going to affect it in real time. which is nice. Also, it would ask me for a boundary. So let's say I would like a simple boundary, which is a rectangle, like this one. So I'm gonna draw a rectangle using either this icon here or by typing rectangle on the command prompt. And then I know for sure that I need also to reference this rectangle. So how do I do that? I just type here, let me type rectangle and see if I have something that looks like a rectangle in a black hexagon. Yes, let's see if I can set one rectangle. It asks me to draw the corner of the rectangle and the other corner. So maybe it's not this one actually. So this one would help me draw a rectangle, but it doesn't reference a rectangle. So the best thing to do here is to reference it under a curve component. So the curve component, as you can see, contains anything that looks like a line, anything that's two-dimensional and consists only of wires. So I'm gonna choose this one here, click, and then set only one curve. Great. And then I put it into the boundary. Amazing. Now you can see that before, let me disconnect by clicking Control and then disconnecting, right? Look what happens. When I connect it, the lines attach to the boundary. And if I change the scale or anything, this would keep the same shape. The shape would follow. Great. Now I have this radius thing. So I don't know what that means. So I would hover on it using my cursor and then read. So this is an optional cell radius. What does it mean, a radius? Oh, so maybe this would start rounding the little edges in here, so it would create this sort of roundish organic cellular structure. Let me test it. I'm going to introduce a number. So this is the tip. If you want to introduce a number using Grasshopper, you double click on the canvas and then you type, for example, the number you would want to integrate. And this would enter as what we call a number slider. Of course, you can also call on a number slider by writing number slider, and that's it. And you can input the radius. Let me just discover how long is this little edge here. I'm going to use my commands called distance, and I have like 8 centimeters here. So maybe I would want something like 800 as a radius, and then I would integrate it. That's probably too much, so or too low. Maybe I'll try 30. Yep. So it is doing what it is supposed to do, which is rounding the edges until it gets this cellular thing going on. Probably I wouldn't need this by now. So now you understand a little bit how Grasshopper works. Grasshopper is a canvas on which we put some components. These components we can find on the upper level here, and they are organized based on their themes, let's say, or bigger groups, right? And these components have little knots to them where we can connect them to other ones until we create what we call a script. And a script is always, and what's good about a script is that we can always come here and add other functions that would change our overall design. And we use Grasshopper for many things. We use it first for form finding, it's what we're trying to do right now. But we can also use it for optimization. That's the next level. And if we optimize a form, for example, to be constructed in real life, we're going to need to rationalize it. Rationalization. And many other things. So let's stop here the theoretical part. Let's go inside and start playing around with this simple component called Voronoi in order to create something that looks like a canopy of sorts, a pavilion that is made of polygons that result from a Voronoi. Crazy. Let's do this. So I have my points, I can start moving them around, etc. until I get my Voronoi. So now what I can do is to go to the output. So basically these are the inputs, right? Whatever we put on the left are the inputs, and whatever goes out are the outputs. So in order to have one output, which is the cells, we need to enter at least a boundary and the point. Nice. So I hover over the cells and it tells me that I have 14 locally defined values. So that means I have 14 polylines, closed polylines, right? If I have a closed polylines, as you already know in Rhino, if I have a closed polyline, I can easily transform it into a surface using the command planar surface, right? So that's this thing I would want to do here. I would want to take these cells and transform them into a surface. So I have many. So I write SRF, which is the short term for surface. And I would use boundary surface. Why? Because from the icon, I can see that I have a boundary. And then you create something orange inside, which is probably the surface. So I integrate the edges, which are these guys here, are the cells. Great. Now I have my cells that are transforming into a surface. And then I can move. Let me check if there is a component called move. Great, there is a component. I can move them in the Z direction. I just checked if there is a component called Z direction. Listen guys, this is gonna go fast from here. So this is the Z direction, this is my motion, right? And then I need a factor, which is the height. So I would like, let's say a height of 400 centimeters, which is 4 meters approximately. Let's say I would want something like this. And then it's all good. So now what I would want to do is to create the structure that's going to be from the center of the point here until the second center of the point, and then it would hold it up, right? So these are basically lines. What do I need to create a line? I need 2 points, a starting point and an end point, and I need to connect between them. So first of all, I need to find the points. I have my cells. I'm gonna deactivate everything, right? Visually. So in order to deactivate, I click on the thing and I preview off. It turns dark gray. That means it's turned off. But it's still there, right? It's just graphically we cannot see it. So I do this also for this one here. So a good tip is to click on Control A, Control plus A, and then preview off everything. So now I know that inside this one here, I have my Voronoi curves. So I'm gonna push it again to be seen. So I'm gonna use Control plus Q. So this is what helps me activate and deactivate a component fast. So I need to find the center of this one, or maybe even find the center of the surfaces, and also find the center of the surfaces that are upwards. So what I'm trying to do is to find the centroid. For this, I'm gonna need a component called area. So area takes any geometry, for example this one, Control Q to activate it, and then it would go on and find its centroid. So once I've found the centroid, I'm gonna copy it and do the same thing for the ones upwards, and this is going to find the other centers. I'm gonna hide everything here so we could see clearly. Now maybe it's time to launch my component called line. So this is the line. This centroid here is the starting point, and this one here is the end point. Nice. Now I can change the height, and I could still have the center point. Look how the script is working out right now. An easy one. And now I can start deactivating using Control Q what I don't need to see. Probably I would need this, so I'm gonna leave it. And then the next step is to turn this into a pipe. So if you're already familiar with some of the Rhinoceros commands, the same ones also exist in Grasshopper. So pipe in order to decide a radius for the columns, structural columns. Great. And now what's interesting about this is that I can change the rectangle, change the placement of the curves, and I could notice that also the structure is going to be changing. Amazing. So now that I made everything right, I would need to create these small openings, right? These ones here. So in order to do that, I will use a command that we also find in Rhinoceros. It's called a offset. So we need to offset the curves, which are basically the curves of the upper geometry. I'm gonna have to offset them. So the geometry I have is this one. I put my cursor on it and it tells me that I have here many trimmed surfaces. So these are surfaces. I need to transform them into curves. So how do I do that? I type curve and I just connect it to a curve. And now I can see that I have 14 polylines. Great, these are the polylines, and these I put them into curve and I give them a distance. Let's say a distance of 12 or 13. This is going to offset, but unfortunately it is offset into the outer direction. I need them to offset inwards. So what I'm gonna do is to add a negative value. So I use the command called negative, connect this one here, and then replace. This is what I'm going to have. A offset curve that I'm going to transform to a surface the same way we did up here. So now that I transformed these into surfaces, I can start showing up the pipes. And now here and in here I have the surfaces of the upper ceiling. Let's call it like that. And then all I need to do is to start Control Q in everything that I do not want to see. And also start playing around with these point placements. Great. So now that I have my boundary surface, I can start extruding it. I'll use a command called extrude, fairly easy. And the direction is going to be upwards, so it's the Z direction. And then I give it a factor, which is a distance of which I would want to offset everything. Let's try 10 for now. Okay, seems fair enough. And voila, we have something that looks like a crown shyness. Of course, now I can change the level of occlusion, right? So they are more open or more closed. I can also change by clicking in the, I can change the names, right? Click and then change the name of the number slider. This one is the height of the structure, right? And yep, this could be helpful also to always organize. These points are the Voronoi points. And the curve, this is my boundary curve. And I click on this little paint bucket. So it would change into this TXT. It will give me the name of the thing I'm using. So fairly enough, this is my script. And this is the, yeah, this is for the pipe. So this is the radius of the pipes structure, the pipes structural pipes. So once I have this done, now I can start perfecting a little bit my script by organizing it into, let's say, into groups, right? So I have my first group is this one, Control G, that would help me create a group. This is the first group, and I can click on it, say, let's say first step, create Voronoi polylines. And this one here, I turn them into surfaces by using boundary surfaces, and then I move them upwards. Move, upwards. So this is the second step. And then I find the central points, what we call the centroids, of the ones that are upwards and the ones that are downwards. And these are the ones that are downwards. Look at the points. Yep, upwards also. And I connect them using a line. So I better like add this one to the group. How did I do that? I just click on the thing, then another right click, and then add to the group. And then I have the last step, which is turning them into a pipe. And then for the level of occlusion, I have chosen, Control A, preview off, I have chosen that all of my geometries that are upwards, turn them into curves, and then offset the curve by a negative value of 5 centimeters probably here, and then turn them into surfaces using boundary surfaces, and then extruding them upwards by the direction of Z. This is going to be the depth of upper panels. Great. Now that we have this, we can start playing around and discover more batteries. Great. So now what we have done is that we used Grasshopper and we understood that it is a some sort of a intuitive canvas on which we can put components that resemble a little bit the command lines that we already find in Rhinoceros. And also we can change the parameters so it would change our designs in real time. So now I can start adding probably more randomness to the design. And for that I will use a new component. Probably I would want to use Populate. So Populate 2D is a component that creates, look at it. If I click on it, click on the cursor and then on zoom, you could see that it creates a region filled with points. And this is what we can see also at the icon. So maybe if we put the boundary curve as our region, this would create a population of points in our already existent boundary curve. And probably if we integrate this population of new points, listen, I have 100 points. If I integrate them into points here, look what I would have. A more fairly distributed patterning. And then I can start changing the count of the points by using the number slider on the count zone. And then for the seed is basically the level of randomness. So if I change the seed, the points change their placement. So now I have a more randomized version. I deactivate and I open the pipes, and I also activate the floor. And now I select the point by using the command cell point, and I delete them. I don't need them anymore. Great. So now, from now on, I can start previewing in more aesthetic ways for diagramming probably. So I use custom preview, I integrate the surfaces, and I use a color swatch. A color swatch. So the color swatch would help me choose a color, probably. Then I copy this one. For the pipes, I would want to have a black color. And now I deactivate the pipe. So it's gray, dark gray. I know it's deactivated. I cannot see it. And I will do the same thing for the extrusion. This time I'm going to give it some green-like texture. Amazing. So what I also could do in this fairly simple script, now I don't need the points, right? What I could do also is to start to round these curves a little bit. So how do I do that? Let me find where these curves are in terms of the script. So I know for sure that these curves come from here, right? From the movement that we have done, to translation, and then we turn them into curves, right? So here they are. Okay, so probably if we try to fillet the edges, this would help. So I use a command called fillet, and I replace it here. So of course it doesn't work because we didn't integrate a radius. So let's say I give it a radius of 5.00 and see what happens. Yep, so it is working actually. The curves are getting filleted, and then I deactivate everything by using Control A, then preview off, right? And I would want to see my curves, and I get the offset. It's fairly working. And from then, I get the boundary surfaces from my offset. But I think this needs more radius. Let's go for 20. Voila. Now it's more organic. And then I deactivate everything and then just open or just preview the ones that we need, which are these surfaces. Amazing. So in order to finish this fairly long tutorial, I want to explain to you something really important about Grasshopper. Anything you do in Grasshopper is not real geometry. Let's think of Grasshopper as your brain. You think in strategy in here. You think in matters of components, of neurological connections between things, right? But in order to transform them into actual Rhino geometry, you need to do what a chef would do. When you cook, you bake. So let me show you what I mean by this. If you want to transform this geometry, for example, the pipes, into Rhino, what you would want to do is to go to pipe, where the geometry is located. Let me preview off everything back. So where the geometry is located, click by a right click and choose bake. You would see this little icon of the scrambled eggs. So you click on it, it would ask you on which layer you would want to put it. Let's assume it's layer 1, and it would always ask you if you want to group them. So in all due courtoisie, we choose yes, please. So right now, if I close Grasshopper, I would see that here I have native Rhinoceros geometry. And if I type Grasshopper again, it would show up, and I can bake another one, and then another one, and then another one. So let's go on and do this. Let me bake this one, group it, bake this one, the extrusions, and also, yes, group it, choose everything. This is my first iterations. Let's say that I would want another iteration with lesser volumes. I'm gonna go here and then reduce the count, right? Yeah, just, or maybe add more count. So it would look more like a forest. Again, bake, group, and then yes, and then bake, and then group, and then yes. So now you can see from one script and one boundary, I can have multiple iterations and multiple options, design options basically. So this would start right now to inspire you a new method of doing things. Instead of thinking about the aesthetics of a project in terms of form, in terms of shape, in terms of aesthetics, you would start now thinking of it in terms of a design system, which was in this case, starting from points, transforming them into Voronoi, creating the rings, the pipes, moving them upwards, changing the height probably. So now you have a design system, and that each time you can now come and just start adding more constraints probably, or more geometric possibilities. Maybe you would start changing the heights, so would you have multiple heights? Maybe the heights that you would want would create this kind of concave canopy, you know, so it would be seen from afar as this big drawing, etc. So the process gets bigger. And this is what I love about Rhinoceros and computational thinking, computational design in its essence. I guess, my friends, this was all for today. We're at, I guess, 30 minutes of recording. And if I get enough comments and likes and shares on this one, probably I would move to the next course where we would use the same script and then we would start adding more things so it becomes more complex and maybe it would give us more ideas. Also, you would find in the description the links to my Instagram page that is After Work Workflow. And here I start making small reels, tips and tricks about Grasshopper. And as I've told you, you'll also find the download link. So see you guys sometime soon. This was Mahmoud from After. Have good fun using Grasshopper. Cheers.